Hello again. Our children and grandchildren spend a huge chunk of their lives at nursery and school, which means that their parents are often not aware of what they are having drummed into them by well-meaning fools who think that they're helping to eradicate racism and sexism. To that end, the children are often exposed to untruthful narratives because these are felt to be more wholesome and good for them than the unvarnished truth. It's a bit like the pious frauds that used to be seen in medieval religion, where the good which resulted from the deception of, say, a supposed relic of Christ or some saint was thought to justify the deceit. So, in other words, those propagating them, though the monks and the priests knew very well that the things that they were displaying to the faithful were fakes, but they felt that if it encouraged faith and made people behave better, it was good anyway. Pious fraud. So it is that a woman who is the president of the British Council of Archaeology has produced a book for children which is full of misrepresentations, half truths, and downright lies. But it's all in a good cause. What cause? Let's look at the cover of this dreadful book, which is called Lessons from Our Ancestors. It is about equality, inclusivity, and sustainability in the ancient world. And Tony Robinson, no less, has been persuaded to say on the cover, a healthy corrective to the notion that history is what white men did. I shall not weary viewers by looking at every part of this book, but limit myself to seeing what they say about the dry stone walls of Great Zimbabwe. Bear in mind that Raksha Dave, the author, is president of the British Council of Archaeology, and you might think you should know better, really. Yeah, let's see what they have to say about Zimbabwe, shall we? Children are told that Great Zimbabwe was a medieval stone city of astounding prestige, built by the Shona people. Hmm. Well, of course, it wasn't a stone city at all. Not in the usual way that we use the term. When we speak of a stone city, we usually mean that many people are living in stone buildings, don't we? Houses, temples, palaces, perhaps, built of stone. In fact, everybody in Great Zimbabwe lived in mud huts. There were no buildings at all. What there are at Great Zimbabwe and what there were hundreds of years ago is a bunch of dry stone walls. These are simply walls built without cementing the stones together. It's the most primitive of techniques for constructing walls, just laying one piece of stone on top of another. In Cornwall, there are dry stone walls of this kind which are 5,000 years old, and they predate Zimbabwe by 4,000 years. You see, at about the time that we in Europe were building Salisbury Cathedral, the Tower of London, and Notre Dame, those Africans were just discovering a method of construction which we used during the Stone Age. No mention of that in this book, though. It is the sheer ignorance about the structures, though, which surprised one, bearing in mind that the author is, as I say, president of the British Council of Theology. She does not appear to know anything really about Zimbabwe. Let's take the famous conical tower in Great Zimbabwe. She devotes a couple of paragraphs to the conical tower, describing it. It's about 30 feet high, and according to Raksha Dave, and I quote, it is thought that the Shona people stored their surplus supplies of grain inside. Well, the only problem with that is, of course, that there is no inside to the tower. It is a completely solid structure. It's not hollow. It's not a building. It's just a solid lump of dry stone walling with a solid interior. There could be no question of storing grain in it. She hasn't even bothered to find out about Great Zimbabwe before writing all this stuff. She says this because she's trying to create the idea that these walls and towers really were buildings and that there was a sophisticated economy in Zimbabwe. That's why she wants us to hear about storing surplus grain to suggest a flourishing economy. She also says this structure took over 30 years to complete and demonstrates remarkable skill. Well, that's a bit ridiculous. It was built 600 years ago by people who were illiterate. How on earth does she know it took 30 years to build? The moment's thought tells you how weird that would be anyway. If it's 30 feet high, which it is, and it took 30 years to build, that would mean it would have taken people of Zimbabwe a year to build a foot of dry stone walling. So one year they would build 1 foot, and then the next year they would build up another foot, and so on, taking 30 years over it. That sounds pretty slow progress for a city which she claims had 10,000 inhabitants. The whole aim of this is, of course, to make black children feel better about themselves and to pretend that they were also building stone cities in Africa at the same time as places like London and Rome, which is simply not true. Every page of this dishonest book is a delight, and I heartily recommend getting hold of a copy if you wish to see exactly how academics are rewriting history to show that sustainability, equality of the sexes, and anti-racism were flourishing in the ancient world. I give a link to the Amazon listing for this book in the description to this video. I'm bound to say that there is nothing particularly exceptional about this book. It can be found in children's libraries. It will certainly be found in the local primary school to wherever you're living because of her, the fact that she is in charge now of the British Council of Archaeology. This has become a standard work to be found in wherever children are being indoctrinated with modern ideas. It's really an unfortunate state of affairs and is, as I say, exactly like the pious frauds which used to be perpetrated upon ignorant people by the church 500 years ago. That we should still be doing it today with our children is little short of a scandal.